Okay, welcome. So today is our Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness meeting, and I've got a few announcements. Okay, so the first announcement is that um, this week uh, is the last week of Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness for a little while because this series is going to go on hiatus, and at the same time as this meeting has been occurring. So starting next Friday, the 16th, we're going to have an 8-week series called, I got to see if I can remember it, The Power of Perception and the Celtic Code. So I think that's a pretty nice title, if I must say so myself. And it's a nice acronym. Power of Perception is POP, so we'll have an easy one to remember there. And then it's going to be we're going to do it'll be a longer running series, but we're going to do an installment of 8 weeks. We're going to have a guest joining us who's a friend of mine named Ramon Ilani. He's a very interesting person, and he's very academic. He's very learned about philosophy and literature, and he is also an expert on ancient Celtic wisdom. And so we're going to be exploring through this 8-week series the ideas that shape our worlds, and much of that is unconscious to us. So a big part of the benefit is that we'll be revealing directly to ourselves, but through this exploration, many of the unconsciously held beliefs that are shaping our realities, our experiences, that are not inherent to what it is to be human. They just are things that we have inherited. And so we'll be able to see them, let's say, more critically, and we'll be able to start to choose more wisely those things that are matching with our core truth. So I'm pretty happy about that, and I hope that you will join us for that. I have just it is, as usual, going to be by donation. I've set it up a little bit differently this time for a variety of reasons. So there's a page for that now that you'll be able to go to find more about it. It's almost completely done, not quite. There's a little bit that's not quite done, but it should be later this afternoon. And that's at joeylott.com/pop. And so POP. And so that's that announcement. Let's see, second announcement. Oh yeah, second announcement. So everybody who's here live, you, I think, have joined the online text-based. I should have a bit better way of differentiating this. The Bliss techniques, the new Bliss techniques offering. And anybody who has not yet, who might be watching this on YouTube, please do. And you can get that information just by going to my website, joeylott.com, and then you'll see a link there that allows you to join that. And that is free. There's no fee or required donation for that. And the other thing that I want to say is that along with that, which everybody knows, I believe now, but is that there's also an online community that is also new on my website, which is called The Circle. It's free to join. And I hope that you will, because it's the best way that I really think that we can let's say co-create something that could be really wonderful. That would be, I think it could pleasantly surprise you. It could be something that would both be helpful to you in the short and midterm, but also something that by your participation grows something that will be a real resource for others. And that's what I'm that's what that's my vision, is that this is something that people can come to, and they'll have a way to connect to that wisdom, which really can help. Because I know that we have a lot of challenges and struggles in our lives, and we don't find a lot of good answers out there. And I humbly will suggest that I have assembled um, many of those things that actually can help, that actually can work, and that are accessible to people, that are gentle, that are not likely to produce self-harm. So I think it's really excellent, and I want to be able to share that, and I want to be able to have people be able to find that, because I know what that's like, to be in a situation to really be struggling and feel lost and all alone, and or worse, not even just all alone, but all alone, but surrounded by so many billboards and whatever, metaphorically, and to just feel very sort of desperate and sad and hurt and confused and angry and those sorts of things. And so I want this to be available to people, because I really believe that it can be something really life changing for a lot of people. And with your help, that is possible. So I can't do it on my own. I mean, that's for sure. But with your help, because you know the things that I don't know about what you're not knowing, right? I mean, I don't know what you don't know. I don't know where you're struggling exactly. But if we can work together and it can be documented, then we have something that is step by step that people can connect to, that they can just, it's like they show up, there's a map, so to speak, and there's pathways that are clearly marked, and maybe even guides to take you on this path. I think that's really needed. So I hope that you will make it a lively thing. I don't mean like lively just for the sake of liveliness, but lively as in alive, so that by your participation, this is what I see is possible. And if you don't participate in that way, then it will just be maybe slower and not quite as robust. So anyway, try it. I think you'll like it. And so today we did have a special request, which was that apparently I made a provocative to some statement recently about this nature. We talked about energy, and the general idea here is that um, we are, most of us are accustomed to a very sort of analytical and materialistic, objective kind of perspective. Okay, so this is how, we don't even know we're doing it, but this is how we're viewing the world. And as we most likely know, at least to some extent, that's not working so well. Because, and I make this point often, when we start to recognize let's say, the structure of creation, okay, that's maybe even provocative right there. But if we start to recognize the structure of creation, then, which is really that's really the purpose of yoga, for example. I mean, that's the purpose of all of these various practices, meditation, is it's not to escape from something. It's not just to have a better experience, but it's to actually recognize in your direct experience the structure of creation. Why? Because then you have more, what I say, leverage. And I'll explain that a little bit more. But if we start to perceive the structure of reality, the structure of creation, which I'm inviting you to start to do that right now, just to be curious about what on earth would that mean? How do I do that? And I'm aiming to kind of guide you in this direction of this inquiry. Then you can start to notice perhaps that there is this sort of spectrum of experience that we could describe as being subtle or gross, right? So one end of the polarity is subtlety and the other end is gross. So subtle means rarefied, we could say. So not as much. It's much less that we have to attend to. Versus gross, which means there's a great deal more and it's very dense, condensed, has got a lot of heaviness. So we can understand this, like classically, this is around the world. It seems that it's understood in elemental theory. Okay. I don't want to get like too deep in it, but you can just kind of understand generally that you have, if you think about elements, so different cultures have different elemental systems, but they all kind of have some things in common. The one that I'm most familiar with is the one it's a 5-element system that consists of earth, water, fire, air, ether. So you think about, maybe you think ether, I don't know what that is, but forget about that for a moment. Let's start with the ones that we know something about. We say earth. Well, what do we know about earth? Earth is fairly dense, right? Earth is heavy. I'm not talking about the abstract concept of the planet Earth. I'm talking about the reality of Earth that you actually can experience. So if you were to like go outside and actually have a real connection with the earth, or if right now you were just to imagine or allow or perceive a connection with the earth, so you can do like the exercise where you feel as though there are roots extending down through, through, like your spine is the tree and the roots are extending down into the earth. It kind of starts to give you a sense of that earthiness, which is, it's heavy, it's rooted, it's grounded. This is the nature of earth, so like a rock really kind of symbolizes earth in a sense, because it's, has those qualities. So cool, heavy. It's in the terms of the this three, I'm not going to go there, that's too much. I'll just stay with the elements. Sorry. But then water, we could see water is also heavy, cool, relatively dense, but then relative to earth, not so much, right? It's flowing. So earth doesn't move so much. It's very stable. Water has similar qualities to earth in some ways, but it's flowing. So we can start to see it's slightly subtler. So earth is most gross. Water is gross, but not as much as earth. Fire. Okay, fire would be the next in our progression, because fire, obviously, there's like, we can perceive fire, you can feel fire, hopefully not too much fire, but you can feel the warmth of the fire. You can see the fire, the light of the fire. You can even hear the fire. So the fire manifests in a very physical way, but obviously much more rarefied in a sense, so subtler than is water or earth, right? Because it kind of bridges between the manifest and the unmanifest. So then next is air. So air, it's like, oh, I don't know, where's the air? I know it's there. I can like have some sense of it, but it's much more subtle than fire or water or earth. And then ether, just say, even you say, well, I don't know what ether is. Yeah, you don't know what ether is because it's transcendent of mind. So air is mind. You notice mind is moving. This is why in yogic understanding, the breath and the mind are essentially one. We can control the mind by controlling the breath, which is pranayama. So this is why slow, gentle breathing is calming, because, or versus fast, big breathing is agitating. We all kind of know that, at least intuitively, but we forget that a lot of the time. So it's a very practical thing to be aware of, because then when you're feeling agitated, you can attend to the breath. So it's like the most basic and yet the most powerful practice that you can do is just to attend to the breath. The more you attend to the breath, the better. So you'll notice right now you can attend to the breath, and you can actually still somewhat tune in to the other happenings. So it's not like, it doesn't require everything 100%, but it's like this thing, this steady thing that keeps you here smooth, instead of all the agitation takes you up more. It's like, then you notice anxiety states are very like, they talk about free floating anxiety, ungrounded. So anxiety is a sort of like a fire and air combined state. Okay, so there tends to go up. Fire goes up, air goes up. So, but then you say, okay, but ether is even more rarefied than mind, more rarefied than air, more rarefied than mind. So it's beyond mind. So mind, we know its tendency is, because it's air, it wants to go up, it gets agitated, moves, jumping about from here to there, always. But beyond mind is ether. So ether, we can understand like consciousness. It's not mind. Mind depends on consciousness, but consciousness doesn't depend upon mind. Okay. So now, that actually, that last statement begins to clarify the another dynamic here in the relationship of these elements. So that there's the earth, and how exactly this would be. So it's, I won't go into all the details, but I'll just say earth depends upon water, water depends upon fire, fire depends upon air, air depends upon ether. So it's a one-way dependency. So this is why consciousness is we can say, the supreme state. It's the most rarefied, and it's that which is in which everything else exists and depends. So for example, when you go to sleep, well, before I go into any more depth on this, I want to take a moment and invite you to physically relax. Notice how you are holding yourself, and just take a moment to really be settled in. You know, so much of the time we're we we excuse and justify all of these patterns of gripping and squeezing and tensing, and it's really self-harm. It's like you're pinching yourself, and we want to notice that we're doing that, and then invite the possibility, which is a real possibility, of relaxing that and actually receiving the support that's here. So the other way around, I'll just briefly attend to before we get back to the business that was attempting to address this question that came up from somebody from last week or earlier this week. But first I'll mention, because it's relevant to what I just invited you to, notice that you can surrender to the support that's here is that, with this, so that this elemental cycle really is a cycle. So we can understand that there's this kind of relationship, sequential relationship in a sense, but it's also cyclical. And this is very important. And so this is why it's said, like, as above, so below, and so forth and so on. Like, this general notion comes up in many cultures. So there's a general, like in Taoism, there's a microcosm and a macrocosm, and they're really the same. That's the revelation. So that what is and for example, in the tarot, it's represented in the major arcana because there's a basic cycle there. And this was Joseph Campbell made a connection between that and what he called the hero's journey. But it comes back to zero, which is the Fool. This is so the beginning and the end are the same. So we can see that the support that's here is found both, we could say, at the ether level and at the earth level, because they merge and they are one when we allow it. So we can, if we look deeply enough within or deeply enough without, there's a merging. And we realize that it's one and the same, and that's the real support. So we can, in terms of energy, we can allow for the expansion of the energy, which is generally desirable, to the degree that we can also receive the support. Because if we don't receive the support, then what happens is we start going into delusion and anxiety and a lot of stress. So it's very, very important to be grounded. The grounding and the attention to the somatic experience is really, really important, because otherwise what happens is, and it should be happening in these meetings always. I wouldn't even say should be. It is happening in these meetings, and then you either are consciously working with it or not. And I'm inviting you to consciously work with it. So to notice energetically that there is energetically, there's a sense of energy. So not having to do with the thoughts about energy or your notions or your past experiences or anything of that sort, but just to attend presently to the general energetic sense. You'll notice that the energy there can be, if we imagine like a conduit, okay, and the energy is flowing through the conduit, but it's a living conduit. So this conduit can expand or contract, okay? And so there's kind of like two variables at play. One is the amount of energy moving through the conduit, and the other one is how much the conduit what the capacity is of the conduit, determined by how much contraction or expansion of the conduit there is. So we could say the conduit is meant metaphorically to represent your sense of yourself energetically, your somatic sense. I hope that this is not too fast for anybody. If it is, maybe anybody who's here live, I've disabled your ability to unmute yourself, but if you want me to slow down or review something or whatever, let me know in the chat, please. But you can get a sense of yourself somatically, and notice that somatically it kind of is this basic sense that either you can contract or you can expand. Somatically, those are kind of your options: contract or expand, contract or expand. So you're not necessarily in charge of the amount of energy, like the amount of energy traveling. Maybe that's up to other factors. Okay. But what you can choose is whether you'll contract or expand, contract or expand. So it's not to say that you should always expand. That's not the point. It's for you to be able to have an awareness of it and for you to be able to choose. So please don't think that you should just attempt to necessarily endlessly expand. I mean, maybe that's a nice thing, maybe not. I can't say for sure for you, but what I can say is that you definitely want the ability to manage that voluntarily, consciously, so that you don't get stuck into these either overly contracted or overly expanded states. You want to be able to manage it so that it's regulated. Okay, so that's your job. So the question is somatic sense etheric? The question is borderline etheric. And so don't think about that too much. Instead, here, what I'm really inviting you to is actually just to feel. And we'll get back to the other part in a moment. But it's really important. The point is, in order for this knowledge to be able to actually connect with your reality, for there to be a real actual meeting so that you can have a different, more truthful realization that you can live moment to moment, then it's really important that there's a grounding. And that is really to notice the somatic sense, just to notice that you are and that you have a sense of yourself being in space at the very least. Okay, so even with eyes closed, you have a sense of up and down, left and right, front and back, right? So I want you to just notice then this somatic sense and notice where in this somatic awareness is there anything that you can voluntarily let go of and surrender to the support that's here. Because when we're squeezing unnecessarily or contracting unnecessarily somatically, what it does is it feeds into this loop that generates paranoia and pain and other sorts of things that we don't really like. And as I've covered this before, that we have the feeling and we have a thought, and when those two co-arise, they tend to co-arise more frequently. And so eventually we think that they're one and the same. They're not one and the same. There's a feeling and a thought. They just happen to co-arise. But when we believe that they're one and the same, it just keeps this thing stuck where we say, I have a problem, I have a problem, I have a problem, I have a problem. And it just keeps going just forever until we take a look at it in this way and we start to realize there's a thought that I have a problem. There's the feeling that I believe is a problem, but actually they're not one and the same. So then we start to investigate the feeling, which is the somatic exploration, and notice that this feeling consists of some kind of efforting on our part. And that efforting generates a sense of ungroundedness. Because if I perceive that I must make effort, then I'm feeling like I'm unstable or unsafe. I don't have ground. I don't have, to be grounded means that I have stability, safety, okayness, basic okayness. That's why the earth is associated with like your, basic bodily health, um, basic, just like basic wellness, like having your basic things taken care of so that you can function in this world. That's all earth. And so everybody, certainly everybody here presently alive has challenges with earth and, groundedness, and probably but more or less everybody on the planet. So it's very helpful for us to notice that, I'm very reactive. I'm reactive. It just like, for example, I'll try to give you a very hopefully simple example from my direct experience presently. So I'm sitting here on the floor. I don't know if this would be I guess it's cross-legged, a cross-legged position. It's not even quite. It's like, I guess this would be what would be called sukhasana for those who care. But there's this experience that's happening. There's sensation that's happening that I associate with my feet in particular, and that feeling is associated in my nervous system with a thought of, maybe this isn't okay. I could say it's kind of like a numbness, slight tingling, what we might call they're falling asleep, So but it's one of those experiences that we've all probably had, and we all have different tolerances for it, different ideas about it. And to the extent that I'm resisting it, it's unpleasant because it produces a sense of ungroundedness. Because in order to resist this experience, I only have two options: contract, or we could say expand or release. Let's say contract or release. Those are my two options. So here I could either surrender to the experience, here I am, or there can be some kind of resistance, contraction going on. And there's some, to the degree that the sense of discomfort continues, then there is that resistance or that contraction, that efforting going on. And what I'm saying is that, so hopefully you can notice that kind of thing is going on all the time. Like just observe yourself for the next couple of minutes and see how still can you be, like really find out. I'll do it with you. I won't keep my mouth still. I'll still say some things. It's a bad compulsive habit, but and apparently I'll try to keep. I can't even keep my eyebrows still. Moving my hand already. See, and notice if you feel a compulsion to swallow, to blink, you can breathe. You're allowed to do that, but just, other than that, like how quiet can the body be while just doing the basic things that are required, like just the breathing required, not the other stuff, like not the heaving chest and the lifting of the shoulders and the bellowing of the abdomen and all the other stuff that we're so accustomed to doing unconsciously. So that's just like a minute and a half, I think. And how many times have you found yourself moving when you consciously, you were intending not to move? And notice how you have some justification for why you do the movement when you catch yourself doing it. And there's some justification, it's there like a shadow, but if you're attending to it, you'll notice there it is. It says something like, well, I have to. Everybody does that. It's unavoidable, something like that. So then if, for example, in my example, there's this experience of that we would call the feet falling asleep. Or if maybe there, if like I notice that I swallow somewhat compulsively, not somewhat compulsively, I swallow compulsively, much more often than I would like. And it's something that I don't attend to that often, but sometimes I do. And it's quite curious because I'm not quite sure why it is, but there's this thing that happens that there's this kind of tension that grows in the throat that becomes uncomfortable. So it's basically sensory motor amnesia is the cause, we could say. But it becomes so uncomfortable then, and the brain starts to produce thoughts about subtle thoughts, but nonetheless, it's like but I might like get saliva in my lungs or something if I don't swallow, like something might go wrong. I need to swallow so that it will I can avoid that particular anxiety. So these kinds of things happen. So you can notice that. So here, though, in this example, with the feet falling asleep, I notice I haven't moved feet yet. I mean, that's the one thing I'm giving myself permission to move other than my feet and legs. I'm going to keep my feet and legs in this position and relaxed with awareness for as long as I choose to do so, I guess. But it will be an interesting experiment because there's a threshold there of tolerance where at a certain point, the irritation, the agitation of it becomes crosses that threshold, and we say, I've got to move. And if we go unconscious, then we do automatically. We're not consciously doing the movement, but unconsciously we do. So, it's about a meeting of, it's about allowing for the settling of all of that mental agitation and to really be grounded and attuned to the somatic experience, because all of the fears that creep up are they all kind of tie back to, but I'm going to be hurt, or I'm going to be killed, or I'm going to be maimed, or something bad's going to happen to me. And we have doubts because like sometimes, so a lot of time people have anxiety. Maybe a thing or two about anxiety. I think it'd be hard to live today and not know something about anxiety. And so if you observe your experience of anxiety, you might notice that much of the time when you're feeling anxious, if you really were to stop, like slow down, pause, consciously relax, you would notice that there's no problem, right? There's actually no problem. You can arrive at that if you allow yourself to calm down, settle, relax. You can arrive at that realization that there's no problem. So that's basically this exercise that I've just been guiding, that you just remain still and relaxed and present. You're not holding yourself rigidly. It's not like you're a human statue kind of thing. It's that you're surrendered. You're really receiving the support that's here and not resisting it and trying to do some other unnecessary thing. So we can come to that realization directly through our direct experience by allowing that settling, calming, and we can see, yeah, there is no problem, but still there's this agitation there. That agitation is giving rise to the anxious thoughts. So the agitation, bring it back to the elemental thing, is like you've got the fire is the agitation, we could say, so it's like giving rise to things, stimulating a lot of anxious thinking. And so that's kind of the state of anxiety. And so that's obviously not desirable. So that's like, there's a lot of energy, but this conduit, this living conduit, your somatic sense is tight, it's rigid, it's held in unnatural ways. So there are bottlenecks, it's a lot of friction, things aren't moving smoothly. So friction and agitation are going to be the result. Fire, heat. So we need it to be relaxed so that we know that there's a certain amount of energy that's present, but we know that we're not allowing that energy to flow smoothly. So we want to ground, relax, be present, be still. And again, still does not mean you should, I don't know, don't make it a macho thing. That's all. Remember the prime directive of gentleness. Please, that's the thing. Always, that should be the guiding principle. But then, knowing that gentleness, take these other things into account and see what you can discover, and you'll see, like, okay, so my legs, my feet falling asleep, and now the sensation seems to grow. There's an agitation there because there's a sensory motor amnesia. So we could use somatic principles for movement using Thomas Hannah's approach, Feldenkrais approach, and that's perfectly acceptable and very reasonable, and it can give us good results. In some ways, much faster than not. However, that if that's the only tool in our toolbox, we're pretty limited and we won't be able to have the depth of experience that we could have by having other kinds of tools available to us. So here's a different tool, related, similar, but different, where just choose stillness, gentle stillness, but stillness nonetheless, and maybe gentle stillness that reveals a lot of intensity. So in a sense, this intensity has always been here, but it's revealed in the stillness, because that agitation that's there, that we become aware of in the stillness, is not dissipated by the compulsive movement. It seems to be maybe build up a little bit, be more localized. That's my experience. So the rest of me is more calm, more settled. The rest of the body, much more settled. The legs, much more agitated. So the energy that's there is usually, the agitation energy is usually dissipated through all the compulsive movement not happening now. So it remains there. I perceive it as uncomfortable, frightening. Now, I wouldn't do this if this is not a macho thing. I wouldn't do this if there was any intention of self-harm, self-hatred, self-loathing, any attempt of any viciousness or any kind of macho kind of attitude, it would be inappropriate. So please understand that's not the way to do it. But here, if there's adequate willingness to remain with gentleness and stillness, I have to find another way. My usual habitual ways I can't do, because my usual habitual ways are not still or gentle. They're agitated movements, small, perhaps, maybe not even small, but lots of compulsive movements, most of which I'm unaware of consciously most of the time, but I can become aware of them. And this is one way to become aware of them. And so what it reveals is, wow, there's a lot of intensity here that I hadn't even been noticing, been carrying this around all the time. So here, finally, something new is possible. So that groundedness, the willingness to be still, to be with, we could say with or as the experience, not to run away from it, is it's kind of fundamental in a lot of ways, like fundamental to being able to perceive clearly, because otherwise we can't perceive clearly because there's too much agitation. So we're seeing the agitation and the distortions of the agitation rather than what's possible when things are settled, calm, and clear. Then we realize when I'm calm and clear, I'm not anxious. That's like one of those things that it's obvious, but it's really quite important when you realize that you can choose calm and clear. You just aren't in the habit of choosing calm and clear under certain circumstances. Like all of us, there are certain thresholds. Like I know that up to now, at least, there's been a threshold where this experience, or what I perceive as this experience of the feet falling asleep, I'm not willing to tolerate it. And so I perceive that I am compelled at times to go unconscious because of the pressure, the intensity. But here I'm challenging that, and at least bit by bit, it tends to give ground. You see, when I choose groundedness, it gives ground, because what's revealed through this inquiry is that this is very painful. It's very, very painful to hold this, to reject this, to deny this, to fear this, all of this division, this split that goes on, where there's not an allowance of the goodness, inherent goodness of life. Because that's fundamentally what it is. I'm saying, I can't let go. Can't let go. If I let go, something bad will happen. If I let go, if I'm not doing this, then my legs are going to fall off. They'll go black and start rotting. So at a very basic level, the opportunity is, it's a very direct opportunity to face bare reality and discover what's actually here beyond all of these false fronts of fear and anxiety and whatever else. So I did see there was one other question, so I will look at that. It says, is it helpful to sense the actual ground beneath your feet to release that collected energy? Yes. And if it's collecting, is that not a good direction? Okay. So yeah, Down is good. The earth is good. So feeling the earth, yes, is very good. So in general, you could say the energy wants, just say the energy wants to flow. So they're kind of, this is actually a really good question. So I'm glad that you brought this up. Yeah, because we could say, to use this conduit notion again, we could say, okay, the energy wants to move. It probably wants to go one way or the other, up or down. And so both are good. It can do both actually simultaneously, and it's like bidirectional. So we really want both. And you get, it's like alternating current in that way. Like it needs to balance. So yes, you want to connect. If you feel that build up, yes, feel the connection with the earth. At the very least, if you're not directly connected with the earth physically, you can at least feel the connection with the floor beneath you, and then sense that connection beneath the floor into the earth. So yeah, that would be excellent. It's very helpful. And then you can also allow the energy to move upward at the same time. Okay, so the question that was asked, though, was about a recent meeting, was about this notion that provocative, apparently, notion that I had put out there, that maybe we are in charge, or we're in control of our lives. Now you can go, I want to be clear that can be true, and it can also simultaneously be true that there's no self and no one to be in charge, and surrender can also be the correct answer, and they're all kind of actually the same thing. So don't like latch onto one thing and try to make that the one thing. But when we look at it from this lens, that from the lens of this statement, that we are or can be in charge of our lives, that I'm proposing that when we are caught up with these compulsions, when we're wrestling with these compulsions at the lower levels, not lower, not meaning worse or bad, but lower just meaning, let's say, denser levels of consciousness, when we're caught up in those, then we have a lot of agitation. And when we have a lot of agitation, all of our energy is being dissipated. So dissipation of energy, coming to address this question about up or down, also the other thing is, another valid thing to do is to dissipate the energy. So we don't ever want to hurt ourselves. And if we just if you put too much energy into something, if the pressure builds up too much, eventually you're going to hurt yourself. So you shouldn't do that. That's why gentleness is really important. And in the spirit of that, I'm going to move my legs now, because it did start to get a little distracting. So I'm going to move them there. So the dissipation is also valid. This is why it is sometimes valid to say, okay, go for a run, roll around on the ground, shout, jump, sing. These are valid things to do that can be helpful under the right circumstances. But like I said before, in respect to something else, but similar concept, is that if that's the only tool in your toolbox, then if all you have is a hammer, all the world looks like nails. And you don't want a world that looks like nails, because that looks like a dangerous world. So you want other tools that will help you. So in a sense, the dissipation techniques are somewhat crude relative to the more refined techniques that we can make use of, which are what we explore in these meetings and what you can find in the Bliss Techniques course. And so the more we can cultivate these kinds of subtler practices and awarenesses and skills, then what happens is we are allowing ourselves to um, release the unnecessary efforting and contractions energetically so that there can be a smooth flow. So there's not so much friction, not so much heat. So we don't get so much agitation. So things just are smooth, like none of the energy, let's say, centers, because you could say the energy centers correspond to those elements. Okay, so the energy centers, you could understand that, like energy rises from earth through water, through fire, through air, through ether. So you think about earth, cool, water is cool, fire is warming. But if we're adding into that friction, then like the earth's already heated up and the water's already even more heated up, and it's all heating the fire, then that's really, really fiery. And then you got a bunch of hot air, good one to talk, but a bunch of hot air. And you know what hot air feels like. It's not good. That's the anxiety. And then you can't handle the higher level consciousness, even above elemental consciousness. You can't, you forget about it. You can't, because you're not able to remain present because of the agitation, the friction, the discomfort of all of it. So these subtler techniques, and from an energetic and consciousness standpoint, the aim is that we want to release, we bring more conscious awareness. Hopefully we have good techniques that allow us to focus conscious awareness in a way that allows us to release those things. And then we get smoother energy flow. Then we can accommodate more energy, but less friction, less heat. So it's like a very smooth, nice, blissful experience. That's the idea. And so then to bring it back to try to respond and answer the question that was asked about how we can control our lives, how on earth this happens. Well, look, we know, hopefully, maybe, that the fundamental problem that we face is ignorance. That, like, we perceive that we have many problems. We perceive that we have pain and all of these other things. But we don't actually know anything about those problems. That's the real problem, is that we don't know. We have names for them. We associate the name with a particular kind of experience that we would say is like a sharp experience, or a pokey experience, or a lightning experience, or a stabbing experience, or a strangling experience. I mean, they're all like, we associate them with bad things. And but that is it's not a good way. The normal way is not a good way. It doesn't work very well for us. So we're trying, our concept of control is usually, though, at that level. I mean, that's all we usually can conceive of, is like, well, I'm already exhausted trying to maintain the little control that I think I have. You hopefully get to that point in your life where you realize just how much you are trying to control everything always at a very dense level and you just can't do it. Like everybody needs to behave according to your rules. And if they don't, then it's a problem for you. So you need to manage where they are and where you are in relation to them and make sure they're not too close so you can't hear them breathing and stuff like that. And, or chewing or saying words or giving you a look or whatever, all those things. And it's just exhausting. And then you have to manage, like everything. You have to manage your, I mean, if you want to if you want to manage things at that level, here's, and I mean this sincerely, please don't use social media. That would be the one best thing you could do at that level, and that would help you tremendously. Turn off Facebook forever. Delete the account. Don't ever, ever use it. And the same goes for any of the others if you're tuning into news, stop it because it's only hurting you. It's honestly poisonous. It's not, if you want to say that there's evil in the world, that's it. Don't do it. Because if you keep doing that, you stay stuck at that level of consciousness, materialistic consciousness. And then you think, the only thing I can do is keep on doing the same thing that I've been doing to keep myself safe, but none of it's working and your world gets smaller and smaller and more painful. Hopefully you can relate to that and see that you don't want to do that anymore. So what I'm saying then is, look, that's not the level that we want to be functioning at because we have no leverage there. We have created in our imaginations a great big enormous infinite universe out there that is made of all kinds of scary stuff for this little tiny thing here. And this little tiny thing here has to protect itself against all of that stuff out there. I mean, that's the basic setup. This is what we're going to be in the power of perception. We're really going to be seeing this in much more clarity. But that's you have to see that that's the basic setup that most people are operating from, and the best solutions that people can come up with are nuclear missiles and things of that sort, because that's the best you can do. And notice how energy, I mean, seriously, it's no joke. Energy at that level, when you're trying to do everything at that level, see the amount of heat that it produces, because the climax of that is nuclear weaponry. I mean, I hope that's clear, that I'm not even just making this stuff up, that that's literally the truth. And so we hopefully all see the terrible mistake of staying at that level of consciousness. Now, most of us, we see the mistake, but we still project it onto them. We think, well, I'm more enlightened. My materialism is more enlightened than theirs. I know that capitalism is flawed. I know that, that nobody's going to save the polar bears. I know, we know, we, especially progressively leaning sorts of people, are like, I know all these things. I'm so superior. All of those unenlightened. It is my own persona of my whiny self. But I know all those people out there are so unenlightened. So the problem, though, is you're still at the same level. So then you forget about it. No good. Because we go back to the same, we can't help but recreate the same basic thing. It's like, see how it is, like you, and like maybe 3 people in your real life, if you're lucky, who will agree with you on some basic things about the insanity of the world. And the rest of the people who will agree with you, you find on Facebook, which is why you don't want to turn off Facebook, because then you'd feel all alone. But actually, you would be better off being all alone, because they keep you stuck at that same level when you're just going, it's all the gossip. And it doesn't matter how enlightened the gossip is, it's still gossip, and gossip is low level consciousness. So in order to transcend that, we have to be willing to just give that up and start to see that's not where I have power, actually. When I try to have power there, everything gets really heated up and miserable. So uh, I need to look at other levels. Okay, so that's why right away, if we move to energetic, I mean, traditionally, I don't have this level of clairvoyance to be able to actually tell you that I can see this much, but it is said by the in yogic and tantric theory that there are 5 bodies, and that I've mentioned these before. I know we're going a little over. I'll go a little bit longer, and anybody who wants to drop off, you're welcome to. If you find it interesting and useful, though, stay on. Um, there's Annamaya Kosha, which is the physical body, is the food body. That's what Annamaya means. And then there's Pranamaya Kosha, Kosha is, I think, a sheath. So think of them like, the Russian dolls. So there's Annamaya Kosha, and then in that is Pranamaya Kosha. So Pranamaya Kosha is the next subtler level. Then it's what I think Manomaya, I believe. So Manomaya is it's like the thought body, we could say. And then there's Vijnana Maya Kosha, which would mean like wisdom body. I'm outside of when I'm this is actually outside of my direct knowledge, so I can't say much about it. Vijnana Maya Kosha, and then there's Ananda Maya Kosha, which is the bliss body. I just don't, I'm not sure exactly. I've never really contemplated enough about Vijnana Maya Kosha to know exactly what that is. So I should do that, and then I could be clearer about it. But the point here is they're in subtler and subtler. So the point here is if your consciousness is presently primarily at the physical, manifest, objective, materialist, Annamaya Kosha, that's where you're at, and you think that you're seeing atoms moving around because that's what you've become convinced is reality, and you see things touching other things, and that's what's real to you. Then your next step is to Pranamaya Kosha. You're going to have a harder time making the leap to like directly to Anandamaya Kosha. That's too big of a leap. Energetically, you've got to come to Pranamaya Kosha. So Pranamaya Kosha means energy. It's the energy body. So that's why I talk a lot about energy, because energy is accessible to us. It's not that big of a stretch. If we start talking, I think Vijnana Maya Kosha is like the astral body. Maybe, so that's metaphorical. It's like, it's totally real for us. It's our actual experience, but it's harder for us to really connect with it or access it because our level of consciousness is too dense at this point. So we have to take a step. We go from material earth to water, now we're like, there's more flow. So energetically, we are sensing, and we're not tied to the heavy notions of the material body, but we're just attuned to the energetic body. So this is what we're aiming at. Somatic, I think Hannah's approach to somatics is particularly good for bridging that gap, because it seems like you're just maybe doing some sort of physical exercises. It's not like, it doesn't seem so exotic and strange, like, you know, a lot of the yogic stuff gets kind of far out. I mean, really some super far out stuff. And, but, you know, doing some Hannah somatics doesn't seem so weird. And so that's a really good step. And then, but once you've done that, then you start to maybe realize, wow, I can actually experience myself energetically. Like I can actually do that. That's a real possibility. Well, then great. Now you're able to do subtler somatics, you know, subtler energy work, which is going to be helpful. So then that's the subtler the energy work, then we start to transition into, and I would, you know, just understand these koshas or these bodies as just just as a symbol. Okay, don't take it too literally. And also don't think of them as being totally distinct. They're all interconnected. They interpenetrate. So the physical body is not disconnected from the energy body. If it was, you'd be in real trouble. You'd be dead. I mean, there has to be energy in the body, in the physical body. But and so in the same way as we kind of think about subtler energy work, it kind of transitions us more into more of a sense of the mind body. So now, you know, again, like if you're having high anxiety, if I know this from working with people, if somebody's high anxiety and I say, okay, let's try to look at your thoughts, forget about it. It will be of zero use. They they have no ability to have any clarity. They can't be focused for even half a second. They feel like they're about to die. This is not the kind of situation where you're like, tell me about your childhood. No. Yeah. So so however, once we're calmer energetically, more relaxation, so there's not so much friction, not so much heat. Oh, okay, now there's a little bit more space. I can, oh, okay, I can see. Yeah, there's a thought. Oh yeah, there's a feeling. Yeah, I'm leaping to conclusions. You know, we can see that a little bit more clearly when energetically there's a calmness. So then we're ready for to explore Manomaya Kosha. Um, Vijnanamaya Kosha. I guess, you know, it's astral and it's you can say like dream body, metaphorical realm. And so this is like, so traditionally in like shaman culture, there's talk of dream time. So we would say this is dream time. So the shaman can go directly to dream time. The shamans use various ways to enter into trance, and they go directly into dream time. So this is very powerful. They know dream time is subtle. The changes made in dream time, they make big changes here. If I'm trying to work here at this level, and I'm trying to give you things to fix this thing that I think is going on physically, not going to work so well. And we all know that seems to be what goes on present day, is a lot of stuff is just like symptoms changing form. Energy's shifting around, but same basic dysfunction is there. Nothing's cured. Things are just moved or pushed under the rug and temporarily. So very like not primitive at all, very important, powerful insight. They know go directly to dream time. And this is why the shaman doesn't give the herbs traditionally or whatever to the person. I mean, it may happen in some cases, but traditionally they take the treatment. The shaman takes the treatment because the treatment is what allows the shaman to go into the dream realm, the dream time, and to get the this part of the soul that has been lost in dream time, so it can be reintegrated with the whole soul. Okay, so that's the general idea. So they're seeing the shaman actually is able to perceive in dream time the astral body. So here's the patient, and they connect with the patient, and they go to dream time, and here's the patient's astral body, and there's a piece missing. They have to go find the piece that's missing, bring it back, sew it on, or glue it on, or whatever, reattach it. So, and maybe other things, maybe they see that, like, why this was done. Maybe some demonic spirit has come and, like, done something, so we have to repair that, or whatever has to be done. But it's all done in dream time. That all seems kind of weird to us, I guess. But that's only to the extent that we're disconnected from that level of ourselves. So that would be like, what? I don't know at what level that is. Elementally, I don't know how to connect that, but I mean, that's the ether, maybe. Beyond that, then there's Anandamaya kosha. So, or subtler than that is Anandamaya kosha. So Anandamaya kosha is the most, we could say, the most pure, essential manifestation of the soul. And so it's not nothing. It's like there's something, but it's Ananda. It's bliss. It's a bliss body. So it's very subtle, and therefore when we connect, like if you connect directly with the bliss body, and then you allow the bliss body to radiate into the other bodies, then the healing of that is very profound. I don't know for sure. I assume that this is how some I think it's a very rare skill, but I do believe some beings know how to initiate that. But that would be very, very rare. But we can discover that for ourselves directly. So we don't need the intervention of someone else. Although not maybe could be helpful. I think that's the traditional role of a guru. But we can certainly do a lot for ourselves in that regard by being willing to, utilize the techniques as necessary to allow ourselves to connect with the bliss body. And then this is key, remain aware, conscious of the bliss body as it, as we, in a sense, bring that energy into the other bodies. So it only, let's say, takes hold to the extent that we remain conscious as that energy comes into the other bodies. So normally we lose consciousness. And I don't mean you go into a coma or collapse on the floor or something, but I mean, we lose consciousness, conscious awareness of what's happening at these subtler levels. And we again get lost in some kind of thing, we're like just asleep, kind of daydreaming. And so that's, if we even get to that point in our process, which everybody here for certain live, you can do that. You have techniques that, and you've been practicing in ways that you can do that basic progression where you can arrive at the bliss body, awareness of the bliss body. However, then where it's very tricky usually is remaining aware of that as you also are, as these other bodies come back online, so to speak. So that we don't get lost and distracted because some thought appears, or because some imagination appears, or because some sensation or whatever. And instead, just to be present and see all of it as it is. So with the recommended daily practice for bliss techniques, the idea is, as best as possible, we can arrive at that conscious awareness of bliss, and which is totally effortless. And then that we can continue for a few minutes to remain aware, because in those few minutes, things will surface. Phenomena are constantly arising because there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of associations. And so there's movement happening. Sensory perception is stimulating certain memories. So the memories are those constellations in seed form, the things that have been associated, and they're in seed form, and there's things that trigger them, and so they pop up. And if we get lost, then we don't get the full benefit of the healing. So it's that, okay, I'm aware of that, but I'm aware of that in the greater awareness of bliss, so that the bliss isn't overshadowed. Yes, there might be some, cloud passing over, but that you don't forget about the bliss just because the cloud passes over. And so as you do that regularly, what's happening is that those associations are being dissolved. Now, it doesn't mean that just because the one association appears and you remain aware of that one association is forever completely dissolved in all ways. And I'm saying that just because I don't want you to get frustrated or disappointed and think it's not working. It definitely is working. You just have to not get distracted by the thoughts that say, I can't believe this is happening again. It shouldn't be happening. Because that's actually just another thing that appears. And so the more you can just remain present and aware as whatever content is appearing and disappearing does so, then you're no longer uh, you're no longer knocked unconscious by those things. So to finally make the point, this allows us to be in charge of our lives, but not at the materialistic level. Because every time we try to be in charge at that level, it's a bad setup from the very beginning. Because in order to go to that level in our consciousness, we have to imagine, well, I'm this person in this great big enormous frightening universe, and I can't really do it all. There's no way. So it's a bad setup from the beginning, and then we invariably end up in a bad way. So the key is to repattern everything so that we stop that vicious cycle of going. Our go-to is, well, let me go to my materialistic consciousness, and instead we allow ourselves to function from increasingly rarefied levels of consciousness, so that there's clarity, there's calm, there's less reactivity, and there's more direct knowing of the fundamental goodness of life. Because what is here, if we simply are willing to tell the truth about it, is bliss. So the more that is directly known, the less the doubts about it can take hold, because it's like, you're standing in an open field at midday on summer solstice, uh, a completely clear sky, and somebody tells you that it's dark, and you just are not going to believe it. It's like, and that's the kind of thing at first, because you have no faith whatsoever, and somebody tells you it's dark, and you're cowering and crying, and oh no, I can't believe it's happened again. Just when I thought finally I had a glimpse of the light, and it's dark again. And but after a while, something shifts. You persist in it long enough, because it happened. You're like, can't believe I fell for it again. Okay, it's bright. I can see it. I can see the sky. It's totally clear and bright, midday. And then somebody comes along and says it's dark, and I'm like, no, you're not going to fool me. But I kind of have to do a double take. But over enough persistent application, you just know for sure nothing's going to distract me from this. It's a process, but in my view, that's a really good thing that it's a process, because it means we can do it. Like, we need a bridge, because we experience ourselves or perceive ourselves as being in time and engaged in processes. So we really need a process, because otherwise these messages that tell you there's nothing to do and there's no one to do anything and everything, it's like that's at a very high rarefied level of consciousness, and you can't bridge the gap between here and there so easily. It just doesn't work. I know, because I really tried very hard. I did all those things. I attended all those meetings and read all those books, and I just felt like killing myself, because it seemed like a really, really bad situation with no hope whatsoever. And fortunately, it's not true. It's just, I think, out of ignorance that people say such things. It may be that that's their experience, because maybe for whatever reason something popped them, but then it's not something that's transferable easily. And what we need, the rest of us, normal people, the billions of us, we need steps. We need something like, tell me, how do I get from here to there? Because I don't even, there sounds like foreign to me. I don't even know what that would be like. So tell me what's the first step? So that's what I'm hoping to spell out as best as possible. It's, a lot of this is it's ancient wisdom that I have really I have studied quite, I guess, intensively. And I always thought maybe I was just stupid or something, because I couldn't understand most of it. But bit by bit, it it really clicked, and it provides us with the path. People, the part of this modern myth is that everything is linear progress, and that this is we're at the bleeding edge of evolution, yay for us. And what that misses, unfortunately for us, is that there are people who've done this work for us. We can stand on the shoulders of giants. We don't have to be floundering all on our own at the edge of empty mechanical universe, afraid of the next asteroid that's going to destroy us. We actually can make the connection with those giants who are here just waiting for us, like saying, come, stand on our shoulders. And so this ancient wisdom has all the clues for us, but it requires something of us that, in our, frankly, I'm sorry to have to say it, but it's really kind of true. Our very dumbed down culture where everything is so, it's like the 3 steps, you know, like the 5 foods never to eat, as like if you don't eat those 5 foods, your life will be perfect. And that's what we're secretly thinking. If I can just collect enough of those 5 things, 7 things, 12 things, and I can just remember them, then my life will be perfect. And it just doesn't work that way. So those who have codified the ancient wisdom because they had the direct experience and were able to do so, they've done it in a way that asks more of us, because they, I think, realize that if you really, in order to make this journey, you actually have to take the step on your own. Like it can't actually be, to mix metaphors, it can't really be spoon fed to you. I can, it's like the teacher is saying, I can help you, I can guide you, I can support you, I can show you, I can reveal, but you have to take the step. And so I hope that without dumbing it down, because I'm not aiming to dumb it down, but I really, my aim is to try to make this ancient wisdom accessible, because we're challenged. At least I am. We've really gotten ourselves as a species, I guess, into a bit of a pickle with all of this very rigid way of perceiving things. And so we kind of need to, because it's so rigid and aggressive, we need gentle softening that helps us ease bit by bit, step by step. And then we can really take hold of the ancient wisdom and live it and really experience it. Because if I just said from the very get-go, okay, there are 5 sheaths, and here are the name, Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha, and my goodness, nobody can make any sense of that and do anything with it. But if we start to connect it with our actual experience and see how it's like a map, it's a guide that's saying, okay, here, see this, take this step, exploring this way, then we can start to feel grateful because our lives actually start to be better. And that's my intention. And so I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. And if I really hope that you will, I don't, nothing forced here, no obligation, but I really hope that you will find benefit and value in the online community. And if you do, please take advantage of it. You can ask questions there for clarification about anything. I really think that our meetings can be much more interactive in a sense. Like, I think it's purposeful that this is a monologue rather than a dialogue, because for one, the main reason is because oftentimes people are uncomfortable having things published if they're in the video. And it's important to me that this is made available publicly to others. But you can, I value your feedback and your questions, because that will help the knowledge that I can bring to you to be catered to your needs and your questions. And so the online community is an excellent place for you to ask the questions or make requests. So there are 2 topics that you can find in there that you can select from. One is for requests and one is for questions and answers. And those would be the appropriate best places to put them, because then I can find them and respond appropriately. So requests would be, hey, I really found some value in this particular topic that we were exploring, but I'd like to explore it further in these ways. Great. Then I know how to make content that will really be helpful to you. And with the questions, I can either just answer the questions directly there in the forum, or if they would warrant being done in a more of a spoken format, we could do it here as well. But that's my hope. So, and if you have other ideas for how to make it better, let me know, because and you can do that there on the forum, because that would help me to make this that much more valuable to you. That's really my goal. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Blessings to you all. Bye for now.